Few events in history fire the imagination to the degree that the Crusades do. It is easy to see why. In the Crusades, we find the inseparable convergence of two things that have been central to human experience since the beginning: religion and warfighting. Like family, both religion and warfighting make extraordinary claims on the hearts of men. So we can understand the fervor that attaches to events when the two are combined, or in fact, when all three are combined, because the enterprise of the Crusades was very much the work of a relatively small number of extended families in Christian Europe. Often, the fervor that manifests when war and religion come together will find creative or even poetic expression in popular culture. Here are some examples of that fervor. La Jerusalem Liberata, or Jerusalem Delivered, is a famous epic poem penned by Torquato Tasso in the late 16th century, some 500 years after the First Crusade. The poem was so popular that Venetian gondoliers would memorize vast portions of it and call them out to one another across the city's canals. 2 centuries after Tasso, the Protestant author Sir Walter Scott set 4 of his novels during the crusading era, drawing from the Crusades all the elements of a great romance: hubris, treachery and villainy, daring, service, and heroism. A little after Walter Scott were crusade-themed paintings by artists of the Pre-Raphaelite school and the engravings of French illustrator Gustave Doré. When we see these, they stir our imaginations with the stories of self-sacrifice, adventure, vows, and quest. In the lesson following this one, we will trace how different people throughout history, like Tasso, Scott, and Doré, have interpreted the Crusades through the lenses of their own current events. But for now, it is sufficient to say that today, the Crusades are widely regarded in the popular imagination as something bad. We will see how this attitude about the Crusades finds its origins in the anti-Catholic thought and propaganda of such men as the French philosopher and writer Voltaire and British historian Edward Gibbon, and even traces back to some anti-Catholic writers of the Protestant Reformation. But for now, we can summarize this present-day view of the Crusades this way. The Crusades were an example of Western European Christian imperial tyranny and intolerance of other cultures. Here's an example of this view. In 1999, the 900th anniversary of the liberation of Jerusalem during the First Crusade, the very event, in fact, celebrated by Torquato Tasso in his poem, some 500 people describing themselves as physical and cultural descendants of the Crusaders journeyed to Jerusalem to apologize for the Crusades. They wore T-shirts that read, "I'm sorry," and they issued a declaration that read, in part, "We have gone to you with swords and guns. We have gone to you with racism and hatred. We have gone to you with feelings of cultural superiority and economic domination. We have gone to you with colonialism and exploitation. We have even gone to you with the gospel cloaked in arguments of superiority." Their document stated, 900 years ago, our forefathers carried the name of Jesus Christ in battle across the Middle East. Fueled by fear, greed, and hatred, the Crusaders lifted the banner of the cross above your people. On the anniversary of the First Crusade, we wish to retrace the footsteps of the Crusaders to apologize for their deeds. We deeply regret the atrocities committed in the name of Christ by our predecessors. We renounce greed, hatred, and fear, and condemn all violence done in the name of Jesus Christ. Here is another example. 1 month after the World Trade Center attacks of 2001, President Bill Clinton delivered a speech at Georgetown University in which he said that people of European descent were not blameless for the attacks of September 11th because atrocities committed during the First Crusade provoked the attack. His successor, Barack Obama, declared at a national prayer breakfast that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. Need another example? Watch the Ridley Scott film, Kingdom of Heaven, which, aside from its abundant anachronisms and errors of fact, portrays the Crusaders as men who did what they did because they were driven mad by the Christian religion. It's important to understand that for many, at the root of these objections to the Crusades is really a hatred of the Christian religion. When Christians today are scolded about the Crusades, they are really being told to hate their religion. In a sense, the enemies of the church, when they attempt to use the Crusades to discredit her, are getting something right. The Crusades cannot be understood apart from Christianity. And the central reality of Christianity is the cross. Indeed, taking the cross was the identifying act of the Crusader. That is, showing the world that he was going on crusade by sewing a cross on his cloak. Going on crusade was a religious act because it was a penitential act, the chief beneficiary of which was the penitent, the crusader. To a world that measures things on the temporal rather than the eternal scale, such an act is incomprehensible, silly or foolish, even loathsome. To get a better understanding of the world's attitudes concerning the Crusades, I'd like to take the next lesson to follow how the Crusades have been interpreted throughout history. In other words, we will look at how the current events and ideas of a particular period in history have influenced how men understood the Crusades. This exercise will be a valuable one because it will show you that it is common for men to assign meaning to events in history informed by their own dominant ideologies. It's not a good way or even an honest way to look at history, but recognizing that it is common helps us expose it and correct it in ourselves when we do it. After we see how the Crusades have been understood throughout history, we will talk about how medieval man understood them. To do that, we will first talk about the man of the Middle Ages, or as I prefer to say, the man of the Christian age. Understanding how he saw the world will give us a proper perspective of how he understood the Crusades. But we are getting ahead. Join me for the next lesson to talk about how men have understood the Crusades throughout history.
If you enjoyed learning how to explain and defend our Catholic faith, make sure you check out the School of Apologetics. In our self-paced courses, Jimmy Akin teaches the fundamentals of apologetic dialogue. Trent Horn shows how to defend life beginning at conception. On top of that, other trusted experts give courses on church history, creation, purgatory, the saints, and more. Sign up today because a faith you can defend is a faith you can own and embrace. SchoolofApologetics.com.